Thank you all for the excitement of inviting the panelists. And of course, this is a really important topic for us to talk about. So what we will do is we on purpose did not have the founders um, uh, introduced by our MC. We're just going to have each of them talk about their own business and the challenges that they face, and then we'll take the conversation from there. So,
Hi everyone, I am Gaurav Dagaonkar. I'm from the batch of 2006 PGP, IMA, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Hoopr. We are a music technology startup, primarily in the business of music licensing. Since licensing word thoda complicated hai, I'll shed some light on it. So our platform basically has songs of popular music labels, and we license them to brands and influencers that make content and especially commercial branded videos on the internet. We are a 40-member team, which is based in Mumbai, and a mix of engineers, music operations folks, sales, and marketing. My background after graduating from IIM Ahmedabad, I actually became an artist. I was a singer and a music composer for almost 15 years till I started this company. So back in 2022, we are into our 4th year now. When I started the company, I was faced with a unique challenge of not having worked anywhere before this. And 15 years is a really long time to be, as a freelancer who's doing music. So for me, when I started hiring people and culture started becoming very obvious as an area that I really need to apply and focus myself on. So quite excited to be here and excited to learn from everyone on the panel. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm Anshoo, same class as Gaurav, 2006. Before coming to Ahmedabad, I'd worked in the tech space for 3 years. I was at Motorola and what was then known as Hughes. Post Ahmedabad, I joined Bain, initially in the Boston office, and then 3 more years in the India office. So 4 years of Bain, then 6 years at Lightspeed, which was a venture capital fund, which was just getting set up as the second person on ground. And after 6 years of doing that, I felt that there's more fun being had on the other side, and I'd rather be there. In a very naive way, I ended up doing that, and that's what I've been doing for the last decade now. That's Magicpin. What Magicpin does is to drive business to the local retailers in our country. We work with some 200,000 retailers in India's top 10 cities, work across food, small mom and pop shop, or a fine dine place, or a QSR chain like a McDonald's or a Burger King. Fashion apparel, beauty, nightlife, entertainment. Anytime users are thinking of stepping out, where should they go to spend their weekends or their evening? Magicpin's agenda is to say, start that journey here. So bringing the local markets alive on the user's smartphone is what we do. People is absolutely the center of what we do. Every town hall that we do every month, we talk about 3 stakeholders: consumers, merchants, and then the people at Magicpin who are serving the other 2 stakeholders. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Amit?
Yeah, my name is Amit Lakhotia. I am from IMA batch of 2007. My colleagues made me realize that I'm not fit for a banking or a consultant role. I probably love building businesses. In fact, there was an Antre store, souvenir store here. Probably my biggest achievement in IMA has been to make that store profitable, like 2 lakh rupee per annum kind of a store, I think. But that was the biggest kick that I got on the campus, and that's what I realized, that I like building businesses. From IMA, I went to Make My Trip. That was an off-campus placement. Saw Make My Trip scaling up sizably, and that time actually startups weren't hot. Like, you would not see so many people thinking of doing startups, etc. In fact, the people who would do startups were the people who were supposed to not get a proper job. तो मतलब आपकी जॉब नहीं लगी तो आप स्टार्टअप कर रहे हो. In fact, I remember during मतलब I tell some of these conversations during like आपने IMA कर लिया, आपकी शादी की बात हो रही है, तो लोग कैजुअली आपसे पूछ रहे हैं, अच्छा आप स्टार्टअप में हो, IMA में करस्पॉन्डेंस भी होता है क्या? So those kind of conversations happened. And then Make My Trip IPO happened, and that's probably the first time my father-in-law read in Rajasthan Patrika saying कि Make My Trip का share 10 गुना list हो गया, and that is the point of time probably he first time with respect called up for Make My Trip and said आपके पास Make My Trip के share है क्या? And so that was a Make My Trip journey, and then the next startup that I joined was Paytm. So Paytm, the aim was to build the whole payment business for India, and the way our taxation structures are built, a Maggie will never be of 20 rupees. Either it will be 18 rupees or 22 rupees. तो 18 में आप 2 रुपए आपके पास नहीं है, 22 में 2 रुपए दुकानदार के पास नहीं है. So the candy businesses that used to happen at that point of time, and everybody used to have those challenges. So I said, like, why can't all of this happen on phone itself? Like, and it was a very, very naive kind of a thought, saying, why do I need to carry cash or card for my small transactions? And that is where the whole wallet system, etc., got built. And now, obviously, I think in last 6 years, only first time I have been refused cash or UPI was yesterday. Ahmedabad, couple of auto guys said, nahi karna, cash hi do. But in last 6 years, like more or less, I think most of us have moved away from cash for smaller transactions. Everything is happening on phone kind of a thing. So again, we got the bank license now. Digital payments is what it is right now, fairly scale, and it's a global success story from an India point of view. After that, I went to a company called Tokopedia in Indonesia. Tokopedia is a Flipkart equivalent of in Indonesia. Very good market, sizable market. I was there for about 2.5 years. Over a period of last 10 years, Make My Trip, Paytm, Tokopedia, all three have listed. So fairly sizable companies. When I came back after Tokopedia, I decided to come back to India. And by that time, it was very, very clear, very, very obvious that I want to start something. I want to build something of my own. When I was at Paytm, that time ambition was, यार हम 50 करोड़ इंडियंस का बैंक बनाएंगे, हम SBI को दिखाएंगे कि बैंक कैसे बनाते हैं. मतलब that was the ambition at that point of time. And but after everything realized that finally only 5 crore Indians, or maybe 10 crore Indians, they have money in the bank. Rest everybody is nearly surviving. But there are 5 crore Indians with credit cards, there are 5 crore Indians with cars. Whatever income criterias you will take, typically most of this will come into that 5 to 10 crore range kind of a thing. That time it was 3 to 5 crore, now it is 5 to 10 crore kind of a range. So I said, what are the problems these guys are facing in their daily lives? And one of the most important problem which these guys face and all of us face is around mobility. Most of us would have started our journey with a two-wheeler. When our career starts, and then couple of years doing well, we'll buy a hatchback, then we'll buy a sedan, then we'll buy a SUV, फिर बीवी की गाड़ी घर आएगी, फिर vacation की गाड़ी घर आएगी, and that's how typically our journey happens. But most of our cities are not optimized for urban mobility. Like the cities are just getting more and more vertical, but these cities are not optimized for car as an experience. So like all of us are very excited when we buy our new cars. The whole families will go in the dealerships. Your mother will tell you that गाड़ी इस दिन घर आएगी. Your wife will tell you मुझे इस कलर की गाड़ी चाहिए. Your kid will tell you मुझे sunroof चाहिए, and all that kind of stuff. But once you buy a car, the problem statement around parking, car wash, challan, valet, fuel, servicing, insurance में सब चोर है, and all that kind of stuff takes the delight away from car ownership. So we said, can we build a platform at Park Plus where we take all car related problems and help user in solving all problems at one place? So that's what we have been able to do. Right now, we would have roughly about, I think India would have a total of 5 crore car owners, out of which roughly 2 crore would have Park Plus app on their phones kind of a thing. I'm sure a lot of you would have Park Plus with you, you would be using this thing. So that's have been the journey so far with Park.
Okay, so thank you for a fairly comprehensive understanding of the businesses that you run. So from what I understand, you have about 500 to 1000 people in your company, and the same number here, and you have a really small size. And if Rahul had been here, who we had actually prepped, he had more than 4000 people in the organization. So anyway, so it's an interesting thing that one is so three issues I thought we would talk about. One is the fact about, attracting, retaining, um, figuring out who is the right person for you. That's one of the questions we will look at in terms of people issues. The second thing we will look at, as we spoke about just before this session, that how do we create a workforce which is very engaged? So, how do we create this workforce of the founder's mindset, where only the founder is not the only one who's thinking about it, but various people are thinking about it? And the third question, of course, is culture. What, when, where are the three things that we will kind of focus on in this conversation? Because our hope is that every startup possibly deals with them at different levels. And given the fact that these all of your organizations are also at different stages, and you have more than 100 years of experience just sitting right here, it'd be great for us to learn from each of you. So we'll start with you, Gaurav, and we you have about 40 odd professionals working for you at this point of time, and you yourself said that you had a transition from being an individual contributor, freelancer, to actually being the founder of all of these people and driving them. So, what are some of your biggest challenges around attracting, recruiting, and retaining? And some examples of those would be very useful as to what we can learn. And I'm sure, people have a different mindset when they are joining a company which already has 500 people as compared to somebody who's an artist himself and is starting a company. So, what are some of your challenges and how have you been addressing them?
Sure. So, my first challenge, honestly, was to think of myself as a business owner. Even yesterday, when I met a lot of my batchmates, I think I only got introduced as the singer of the batch and the composer of the batch. But when I decided I will start this business, I realized that I cannot do this alone. I definitely understand the music industry very well. So 10 saal, I would have done music for about 15 films. Fortunate to have worked with all the labels, whether it's T-Series, Saregama, Sony, and so on. So I understood the artist side extremely well. But when we thought of building a tech platform, the idea was that I need co-founders who bring in some complementary skill sets. When you're a music director, a lot of your thought process is very individualistic. Like मेरी maximum team मेरे साथ 2 या 3 महीने काम करती है एक फिल्म पे. Then we used to move on to another movie. The people used to change. There was never any responsibility for somebody else's growth over years and so on and so forth, right? But यहाँ पे I needed to first align myself there. My first go-to people were friends from my own batch. I remember meeting Anshoo even before Hoopr was made. As an idea, I had gone and met him that I want to do this and what do you think of it? And we spent a lot of time at the Magicpin office at that point in time. Even quite a few other batchmates. Pranay is sitting here. In fact, Pranay ki kafi help li maine in trying to understand how to build my core team. So the first part, I think when you are starting up, and this is for those who probably are at this kind of a stage, maybe you're setting up something, your first few people and your co-founders are extremely important. I think that they need to be as excited and committed to the plan as you are, and wo responsibility as a founder aapki hai. Because in a founder's case, you might be uprooting somebody from something that they are already doing. You might be extremely passionate about the problem. You might be able to see the end result, but when you're getting somebody else on board, it is something of great responsibility. So, and as I said, it's important to think of their future too. It's important to have that clear conversation. So Meghna, who's my co-founder, had a product background. She came from a product and tech and sales background. So it really helped us. In her previous startup, she had a challenging time where she was there right from the start, but was never acknowledged as a co-founder. And she had those scars after a few years when the founder sort of moved on and said that, yaar, matlab, you're not a co-founder, when verbally wo hua tha. So the first step for me was to actually put it down in black and white and offer her that comfort that you are a co-founder, so that there is no stress. And I feel this is very important, especially when people are believing in your vision. To put things in black and white gives them a lot of assurance that, it's not just about your vision and your end goal, you're actually taking them along. We built the MVP from our own pockets. So हमने अपना पैसा डाला इसमें, and we actually got the product up and running. That's when we raised capital for the first time. That's when we ran into recruitment challenges. So we were 3-4 of us trying to recruit tech folks, and I would honestly say यहाँ पे हमने काफी गलतियां भी की. Like the first person I hired as the VP of tech, I really liked the guy, and I read somewhere that if you can spend 1 hour with somebody at the airport, he's the guy. And so I could spend hours with this guy, and we had a great chat around what we could build. He understood the problem. But in a few months, it was very clear that it was not translating into the product that we had imagined, right? And again, we were faced with a tough call that this is not working out. Again, some kind of a REM session from folks कि यार ये नहीं work कर रहा है, मैं क्या बोलूँ इसको, will it look bad, and so on. But we took the hard call कि नहीं यार ये नहीं work कर रहा है. मतलब respectfully we'll have to say कि let's call it a day. And that's when I realized the other thing, that in early stages, use as much help as possible in recruiting in areas where you are not an expert. So today, even today, in certain areas, I don't mind taking the help of either our investors or friends who've been there. And we've taken help, especially in tech or even sales. तो मैंने तो काफ़ी help ली है shamelessly in going and telling somebody कि यार अगला interview मेरा batchmate लेगा, and so on. Even if they feel bad, I have no problem, because here's somebody who might be able to see something that I may not have. And I think rewarding people who are good, especially senior people. Like one of the challenges as an early stage company is the people who you like, you usually cannot afford. And, they are also in two minds. I like the vision, but I'm working in a really stable place. And in music, in all honesty, unfortunately, जो सारे पुराने startups रहे, उन्होंने ऐसे खराब decisions लिए that most of them unfortunately sort of fizzled out, and it has a very opaque kind of a mindset or a representation. So you have to convince, at least in our space, we've had to convince a lot of people who have come in, they've stayed with us. Retention, finally, I think retention is a mutual thing about the satisfaction either party is deriving. The company should be extremely happy and satisfied with what the team member is bringing. And in all honesty, even the team member really needs to derive the same amount of nourishment and growth, personal, professional, financial, from the company. And मुझे ऐसा लगता है in the first year I was very obsessed with just shipping the product. मुझे और कुछ दिख ही नहीं रहा था except for getting my library in place, getting the product out. Those were some of the worst years. I mean, that was the worst period from a people and culture perspective. After a year, I realized that यार ये मैं ignore नहीं कर सकता. In fact, that's when I took the people and culture accelerator here. I felt that this is very important for me. And since then, consciously, we have spent a lot of time with the team. Choti si team hai, but many of them have completed 2 and 3 years in a 3-year-old company. I feel that वो compound hota hai when they stay with the organization. So yeah, that's about it. We still have to see the longer growth over 8 to 10 years. But this has been my experience in the last year.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I think the highlights for me is, use help. You don't have to do it all yourself. There are lots of people around who you can get help from. Also convince people about your trustworthiness, that you are a trustworthy person and they can trust in you. And I think focusing on the nourishment and growth of your team is an extremely important aspect. And I think these are just good lessons for each one of us to remember, irrespective of what size company that we are, designing at this point of time. So good. Thank you. And Anshoo, we go to you next. I think you got a curveball thrown at you during COVID, and you pivoted at that time because you needed to. And so maybe questions for you are around what are some of the challenges and ways in which you have addressed the same. 1 or 2 lessons that people possibly can keep in mind when there is volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity that gets thrown at you, which is just normal nowadays. So,
sure. And let me just pick up from what Gaurav said and what you summarized. Not everything needs to be done in-house. In fact, when you're new to marketing, Gaurav was the first guy I called. I don't know anyone in the marketing space. I've been in tech roles, I've been an investor, I've been a consultant, but how do we map this industry? In fact, our first ad, our second ad, our radio jingle, then there was a very popular, if any of you guys remember, Cred did this very popular Indira Nagar Ka Gunda Rahul Dravid ad. And we could turn around very quickly on that, and we could get Vijay Raj to come and say like what nonsense, the points aren't of much use. And that thing blew up, right? And remember, we were 4 days before there was a COVID lockdown going to happen, and I called Gaurav and said, Gaurav, ye kara do. Right? Gaurav somehow managed to get the whole thing done, and it was a hit, right? So this piece around building teams, not everyone needs to be inside the org. You need friends outside, you need friends inside, you need this entire system to work. And I've found that model to be very leveraged, right? Especially there are certain skills which you don't need all the time. But if those skills are a lot better available to you on a part-time basis, defining things, for example, early stage, right? There's no point hiring a CFO to do everything, right? But you still need controls in place, right? So kind of go and build all of those pieces. That's how we grew. To the question you asked me, I'll talk about what was pretty much a near-death situation for us. But teams are usually easier to manage a near-death situation. Everyone's seeing death is in front of you, fight or die, right? It's easier to just converge everyone, right? Tougher times are when peacetime is happening, right? Then you can easily get lost, right? Like, what do I do for that? I have enough money for 2 years. You can easily go and blow that up, hire more people than you need, do projects that you don't really need to do. I think those are pieces which are far more, go into defining the company. But first about the COVID time, I remember it was like 16th of March 2020, and we had written a note to the board that we are going through a great month. It'll be our best month ever, near profitability, growing scale. And we were just about to do a fundraise. We were in conversations where a couple of investors had said yes, and the round was about to be completed. And then this thing happened, and 20th March, everything was shut down. All the investors said, pens down, let this go through, and then we'll decide. What are we going to do? We don't have the money to go through all of that, right? And that was hard. Thankfully, one of the investors who had committed, that was Samsung Ventures, they said, hey, my money is still available. You put together a round. So around that money, we could get some of our existing investors. We could put 50 crores in place, which was very valuable 50 crores at that point in time, which saw us through that phase. Now, what had happened is that our business is to send customers to the stores. And because of COVID, there was no going out possible. Everything was shut down. And we are mostly lifestyle and discretionary. And the whole business came down to essentials at that point in time. So the good thing, though, was in such situations, you also lose the team. The good thing was that the whole world had shut down. The team also didn't have anywhere to go. So that also helped converge everyone to say, okay, what do we do now? And we said, okay, we'll launch delivery because customers are there, merchants are there. We don't have the delivery capability. Let's just go and build that. So we built delivery in that period, and we built that very fast, right? And there was this drive amongst everyone that we'll make this piece happen. And in the next 3 months, we could launch delivery. We first did grocery because the essentials were important. Then we came to food because we had a lot of food merchants already on the platform, and that kind of found its own feet. We started to build something. Dheere dheere, going out slowly started to open, and by the end of that 1 year, we were at a place where things were starting to come back. And we could raise another $60 million at the back of that because there was just tailwinds then. And it created a double engine where we had delivery, which had come in, but then we also had going out, which was going into revenge shopping mode, right? So fashion apparel became a big piece, and the subsequent period was good. But to just cover that period, I remember very clearly the conversations were around, okay, what is it that we can release today? Because the revenue had come to a zero, right? Now, what can we do today that will make a difference? This happens when you're starting a company. But we were there with a team strength of, at that point in time, some 300 people, and saying, okay, what can I do today? And that required the team to rewire itself and say, okay, we'll no longer work in product cycles. We'll just release today, see what happens, learn from it. The metrics delivery was just new, so it was really bad. They were poor. We were stitching together different third-party logistics providers to create an experience. But it brought the energy. I remember and everyone was at their home, right? So people launched the app, and then everyone would clap. Okay, good. Like there's something more that's come out. So that was a phase in which everyone was bound together very tightly. There was this one common agenda. What's the number for today? And people could build on it across. There was no differentiation between who's doing product, who's doing tech, who's doing operations, right? Everyone was just coming together. So that's what I meant by in wartime. It's easier to just align everyone and say, go at it, right? And everyone took haircuts on compensation. We had little precious money. So everyone said, okay, till the time this goes away, we'll of course, above a certain comp, we took that haircut. It brought people together. And as things changed, we could revive all of those pieces. And we didn't lose almost anyone during that period because of just the intensity. And I'll connect this to the peacetime piece. What I've found is wherever you leave peace, that thing rots and dies. It just literally happens, right? You have a senior person, go and say, okay, you are there, there's a team, now you go and build in peace. Nothing ever gets done which is worthwhile. The reason is, structurally, most of the times the businesses we are building, they are challenging something and they're unlikely to succeed. Now, if you put some fire inside that whole piece, then sure, there's a likelihood of it working. Otherwise, it's just many projects which are probably just doing the time. One approach which we found to be fairly objective in doing this is to standardize metrics for everyone and kind of do a daily check-in. We built this rigor during the time of COVID, but 9 a.m. every day, 9 to 10 a.m., we have got like 4 calls where we would like do 15-minute check-ins and we talk about this is how the key metrics are moving. Senior, junior, everyone's on the call. That made data consistent. Everyone's looking at the same thing and everyone is seeing what is working and what is not working. It brings certain amount of ownership, accountability. Also, if it's not working, you don't want to look bad in front of the rest of the group, right? That worked to some extent. The data and transparency helped build accountability. But that also is not enough because if you've added like 20 projects to do, none of those projects, if enough of those are not working, they'll still not get noticed. And that was a learning for me. Now over a period, I've realized we scaled up to 1,000 people. We scaled that back to 600 people, and I'm very happy we did that. In fact, our customer support team at some point was 200 people. Now it's 10 people. Merchant support team was 50 people. Now it's again 5 people. The reason is that if you give people a challenging problem, if you give people a hard problem, they'll think of non-linear ways to solve that problem. It'll build innovation. It'll lead to you doing something that can stand the test of someone else who's already large and bigger doing it, but not as well as you can do it. I think that way of thinking has helped us just narrow things down, make it smaller, make it tighter. And all of this AI that's becoming available now, it's making it possible. Our ops managers are becoming more of product managers. And that's the thinking that everyone aligns to, that what people should be doing is not the do repeat loop. What people should be doing every day is building a product that does the job by itself. I'll stop there now.
Very interesting. So in a way, I hear, what I would possibly say in a class on managing people and motivating people. That is, build a connect, have transparency, create a challenge, and have people being creative, yeah, and problem solving. And of course, one of the things that leaders do is that they take whatever's happening and they make meaning out of it. They help people to make meaning. And that's what I'm hearing you say. So, in a way, it's traditional wisdom also applies in these cases as well, that people need to feel challenged, people need to feel seen, people need to feel that they're doing something that's meaningful and exciting. And as long as you can do that, I think people feel you're building teams and you're getting work done. So great, thank you. um, Amit, coming to you, as we were speaking outside, I asked you, now that you're on your fourth thing, what are some of your strengths? And you said one among the three strengths that you mentioned, one you said was team building. So we really want to hear from you. What are some of your insights, or what are you, why do you say team building is a strength, and what are some things that we can learn from you in the course of your various enterprises that you've run, especially in the context of the one that you're running right now? 50, again, you have how many people? 500? 500 people. So that's a large number to manage.
So I think from a team building point of view, it depends on what stage the company or you are at. So when we were early stage, like we raised a decent capital, and I actually, whether it is Make My Trip, whether it is Paytm, Tokopedia, I all joined early stage, and that time the business models were not clear. So I think one of the biggest learning for me at the early stage has been to not go outside your circle for hiring, because your rejection rate is close to like 90%. Like people would come to you, go through that 2-3 rounds of interview, and then they will reject you for some weird reason. People will figure out their reason of saying no, but answer is no. The people who will join you at early stage are the people who are part of your 1 degree, second degree, maybe at max third degree, but not beyond that. Even there your success rate is close to like 30-40%, but it is still 3x better than people completely outside. So I think that was the first thing. The second thing is, I think uh, int- younger people are more happy to take that risk bet as compared to people with more experience. So even if you know people, a guy with 15 years of experience is less likely to join you as compared to a guy who is like a 2-3 year kind of a चलो देखते हैं करके क्या होता है क्या नहीं होता, मे बी मतलब वो लेस मेच्योरिटी होती है तो रिस्क लेने की एबिलिटी या करते हैं, दैट हैपेंस अ लॉट काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग. So these were the two big learnings that I had. The third one has been like hiring a lot more around attitude. Like मैं कर लूंगा और ऐसे करूंगा, नहीं होगा मैं दोबारा ट्राई कर लूंगा, दूसरे तरीके से ट्राई करूंगा, पर मैं आप मेरे पे छोड़ दो. एक्चुअली छोड़ के कभी होता नहीं है, वैसे हर बंदा सोचता है मेरे पे छोड़ दो, पर होता नहीं है. मतलब one of my bosses at Make My Trip had told me, and this he was Amit, स्वर्ग हर कोई जाना चाहता है पर मरना कोई नहीं चाहता. किसी और के मरने से आप स्वर्ग नहीं जाओगे. अगर आपको स्वर्ग जाना है तो आप ही को मरना पड़ेगा. So I think that has been a key learning all the time, saying while delegation is good, etc., but important is to make sure that setting right expectations, tracking regularly, etc., etc., making as clear as possible kind of a thing. And I think one thing which I've learned recently, and which is while you have set the expectation, but also set the timelines clearly, saying इतने टाइम में ये करना है. If you don't set up timelines, and that is one of the mistakes I used to make a lot earlier kind of a thing, which was not setting timelines. हम कर तो रहे हैं अमित, हम लगे तो हुए हैं, like those kind of conversations. I think these are 3-4 things that I would have learned on the hiring part kind of a thing. And I think use the network well. I think a lot of my friends would have got frustrated with me over a period of last 10 years, because half the time when I called them, the first thing was, यार इसलिए कोई बंदा है क्या, ये हायर करना है, इस चीज के लिए कोई बंदा है क्या, कोई है दिमाग में. So, and it is hard, like people don't realize off the hand kind of a thing. And sometimes when they refer you guys, you go through the interview cycle, you reject them. यार मजा नहीं आया, अरे यार तेरे को 3 बंदे भेजे, तूने 3 मना कर दिया, अब तू क्यों मांग रहा है बंदे मेरे से. So those kind of conversions. So I think once you go through that hiring cycle kind of a thing, that's how you pick it up.
So one interesting thing that you're saying is that clarity of roles. Typically we would say clarity of roles, but in a job like when a startup is there, you really have clarity of roles. So I can understand the clarity of timelines, but are roles that clear?
Yeah, at a startup founder level, the ambiguity has to be with you. It can't be passed on to the team.
अच्छा.
आप ambiguous हो सकते हो, आपको clarity नहीं है क्या चलेगा क्या नहीं चलेगा. पर अगर मतलब there are very few team members, मतलब I have encountered in last 15 years who can handle a lot of ambiguity at their side.
That's very
Most
interesting.
people will say मेरे को clarity चाहिए, give me that conviction. Actually a lot of team members run on borrowed conviction of the founder. फाउंडर को खुद कन्विक्शन नहीं है कि चलेगा नहीं चलेगा, पर टीम मेंबर को फाउंडर से ये कन्विक्शन चाहिए ये चलेगा. आप बोलोगे तो मैं कूद जाऊंगा, पर ये मत बोलो कि सोच ले कूदना है कि नहीं कूदना है.
राइट.
तो यू आर मेंटली स्ट्रेस्ड कि यार ये चलेगा नहीं चलेगा, और 1 महीने बाद मैं क्या बुरा बनूंगा इसको जब ये कहेगा
कि नहीं हुआ.
And I think other thing what you have to learn to live with it is like, are you getting it right 7 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times kind of a thing. If you are getting it right there, then it is still okay. But if you are getting less than that right, then you are not thinking deep enough. Then it's a founder problem. ambiguity has to remain at a founder level. It can't be passed on.
So very interesting. So what you're saying is also, as a founder, you have to be reflective and kind of keep looking at what am I doing right and how many times am I doing it right. And if that numbers drops at a certain point, then you really need to go back to the drawing board and say, what am I not doing right? So that's a very good tip as well, that you can't just be in action, but you also have to be analytical about your own self. Going on, and oops, why we're having a very nice conversation, relaxed. So we actually have only 5 more minutes. So let me ask a question, and I think that is at the back of everybody's mind. Is, we've all heard that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything. But how do you build culture, and when do you build culture? In the beginning, when you are at a certain stage in the company, when and how do you build? And I'm going to ask that question to all three of you. Your reflections on it. You can start, Amit.
I think culture has to build from beginning itself.
Hmm.
Like, this is what we want to build, this is how we want to go. It can be a bit hazy and like more fluid in the beginning, but at least broadly the guardrails are there, kind of a thing. Matlab, you have to clearly define, like for example, you have to clearly define, are we building a company where work life balance matters or it doesn't matter? Are you comfortable with getting a call on a Sunday? Are you not comfortable getting a call on Sunday? Are you happy with the bad customer experience versus are you not happy, kind of a thing? So I think some of these are external, some of these are internals. Internals could be around, like people will say, यार travel reimbursement है, गलत है, दे दो, क्या फर्क पड़ता है. Some of those things could be fluid because amounts, but some of these things may not be fluid. So you have to define that, and gradually the guardrails become tighter.
Okay.
But
so in your mind, it has to be like from the day you start.
Absolutely. I think whatever Amit said is rhetorical. If you answer the wrong question, he'll fire you or not hire you in the first place.
Correct.
On any of those questions. The reality is that, like, as a startup, you don't have a choice. You have to win, right? It doesn't matter like what it takes to win.
Yes.
As there are physical constraints around how much you can do, and of course you'll have to stop to catch your breath. But the only thing that matters is that you're successful, and the smaller the company, the more everyone's contribution matters so much. There's just no slack. So I think finally we when we started, and after like whatever I was doing before this, we came up with three things. Pillars of our culture. We said curiosity, ownership, and frugality. This is what matters. Sure, we repeated it oftentimes. It didn't really matter. I don't think people got it. But finally, and this has been said enough, I think, in management books, that what culture is, what gets rewarded, right? If you, it doesn't matter what you're saying or what you're not saying. What are you rewarding? Who are the people that you're pulling up, right? So the more we realize that, the more we've got this data-based way of saying, this is who's doing well, this is who's not doing well. And then you kind of say, okay, this is why this person is getting ahead. So it's results oriented. The role might be to that extent getting defined, but the outcome is very clearly defined right from the beginning. This is what we want to hit. Sometimes we might overcorrect in defining a goal too soon. That's of course possible, but better to do that and correct the goal versus not having anything and kind of saying, okay, best interest. The challenge still that comes in is that people will feel entitled because of years of experience, years spent inside the company, and not always be aligned with, okay, like, did you change the game or not? And intentionally, we would do a review every 6 months. We still do that, right? In the beginning, you should absolutely do it, right? And as you grow, it becomes a burden. But we still do that largely to say that people who are doing exceptionally well will get an opportunity to be recognized. The younger the team, or at least for all the younger people, if you do that, that creates a sense of, wow, right? What did this guy do, right? And this goes back to the point around, okay, what is getting rewarded? And then you can create more people who you want to behave in a certain way, who will have that very high degree of ownership, that founder's mindset. And that kind of propagates over a period. There might be people who are smart for themselves, but that doesn't really solve, right? What solves the problem is someone who has got a lot of drive, has got a lot of energy, wants to make sure that they do the job well. they'll pull energy towards them. They will seek out help, as Gaurav was saying, right? Because they don't want to do well, right? And those are the kind of people who create the foundation. And once you have enough of these people, they grow in the organization, then you've got, okay, these pieces are set. And then you can build more on that foundation.
Interesting. Interesting. So again, you're saying not only reward the right thing, but also make it transparent why you're rewarding it, so that becomes the message. Because I think in psychology we always say people behavior is shaped by the rewards that we get or we don't get. So it's totally shaped. I think just as a reminder for all of you, if you have a question, you can please write it and send it to us. In the meantime, Gaurav, if you want to add on this particular thought.
I'm with Amit and Anshoo here that culture should be looked at right at the beginning. For the first year in our organization, honestly, we did not focus on culture as much as product. And I feel ki uske, it doesn't break things, but it delays a lot of good things, that could have happened a little faster, is my experience. I have followed one plan which I actually came across a couple of years ago, which I can share for the benefit of everybody. In a startup, we are all gunning for results, right? That is what we all agree upon, कि results हैं तो सब कुछ है. As we were discussing backstage, actually the truth is company में अगर पैसा है तो थोड़ी खुशी तो होती है. If a company is out of money, everyone is, the entire behavior can go haywire. So results matter. That is a fact of a startup because the odds are stacked against you. Those results come when there is a high degree of ownership, as Anshu spoke of. अगर सब accountable है, the team is firing on all cylinders. That ownership comes when there is commitment to the work that is there. That commitment comes when people are able to have a constructive conflict with one another. And जब लगे कि यार ये सही नहीं चल रहा है ना, उसी time पे you should be able to raise your hand and say, I'm not agreeing or I have a counterpoint. And finally, we have distilled it down कि घुमा फिरा के everything boils down to the trust that the team has. I keep coming to this every time. So the pyramid actually looks like trust at the bottom, conflict or candor, commitment, accountability, and results. I can share 3 examples which I have come across where trust actually solved for many things. We had a senior leader still there in the company, and I realized that she was only telling me the positives and all the misses or the negatives were not told to me directly. They were reaching me indirectly through the other people, and I was wondering कि यार इसने मुझे अच्छा तो बताया but ये वाला part नहीं बताया. I had to, so that was conflict. She was avoiding any kind of a difficult topic. यार सब अच्छा बताते हैं इसको, so that there is always harmony maintained and he doesn't. So I had a separate session with her, almost an hour and a half, where I realized that she had issues in the past where when she said the truth, it was not rewarded or it was met with a very harsh judgment. And she was bringing the same thing here. In terms of commitment, one of our absolute star engineers, who's an innovative guy, we noticed that he had completely tuned off. बिल्कुल मतलब सबकी हाँ में हाँ मिला रहा था. जो उसका एक innovative nature था, it had completely gone. Again, we took him out, we sat, and the actual reason was that a few months ago, his father had suffered a heart attack. And apparently nobody in his team went up to him when he came back to ask about his dad. And post that, he just felt that looks like I'm only valued for my technical ability, but they don't care about me, the person. So ek kaam karo, kal se yaar, I'll do exactly what I'm told and nothing beyond that. And similarly, we've seen that in a lot of such cases, even when it's accountability or results. If somebody is giving results, if you reward them at the right time, it's a positive behavior, as you just said. Then they feel results se yahan pe mil raha hai mujhe kuch. Versus somebody who's delivering results and you don't, do the R&R rewards and recognition नहीं होता, तो उनका motivation चला जाता है. So we have sort of, got into this habit कि सबसे थोड़े time हम out of office भी spend करते हैं to understand how is your health, घर पे क्या चल रहा है आजकल. Everything needs, because sometimes that can spill over into the workplace. And especially with a small team, I think that is important. The last thing that I would like to say is, in a small team, again, the founder's conduct matters a lot. Because there's so much exposure and visibility. Like in my team, those people see me every day. The way I behave is the way, they will absolutely feed off my energy. So we have to be very cautious sometimes. And, founders motivated log hote hain. बहुत ज़्यादा they are gunning for stuff. But you can't look for yourself in everyone else. You have to respect कि दूसरों की personality ना वो उनकी personality है. एक टीम में एक कोहली होगा तो उसी टीम में एक there would be somebody else who's, or if there is a Sachin, you need a Dravid, right? So there will be somebody who's innovative and trailblazing. There'll be somebody who's more of a stable guy. There'll be somebody who's a quick decision maker, whereas there is somebody who's a harmonizer. And a good team needs all these different types of personalities. So one mistake that we made in the beginning was ये मेरी तरह नहीं है तो ये out है. Versus now having the maturity to understand that you need all types of people to make a successful team at the end of the day.
Very interesting. Yeah, again, I think the focus on the whole person rather than just their skill is very, very important. And of course, you matter, or your behavior matters is very important as well. So I think there's so much that we've learned just in this 50 minutes of conversation. But let me just quickly look through some of the questions. So I think people are saying, one of the questions I can see is that how do you effectively attract high quality talent and retain them, because there is so much focus on career mobility. People themselves want to move away for whatever reasons. So how do you address that? So maybe we start with that question and I'll read the others and then see.
I think there are different points in time when different levers matter. When we started, I'd started alongside my co-founder who was also at Bain, and we could start with almost a bunch of really high quality folks who had spent time at Bain. So all of the usual credentials like IITs, IIMs, Bain, right? Like we had all of those. It was easy to attract people because of the past credibility. What I realize is that it's not enough. They like the idea of doing the startup. They don't realize what it actually is to do the startup, right? Like you have to wipe the floor. That's what you need to do. If you're joining that early, that's what it is, right? Yep. And that's then a wrong hire. You can hire doesn't mean you should hire, right? To that extent, there is this maturity around get horses for courses, right? Get the right kind of people and kind of build them over a period. Eventually retention, and this is in a way like recruiting where you check all the boxes, but then retention becomes an issue. And we lost a bunch of those folks within 6 months. But at the same time, some of those guys who came in and they were younger guys, they went on to build very strong pillars in the organization. So you can't overthink this as well. You'll try a few things, some will stick, some will not stick. Eventually, we realize retention is a function of people feeling they have created value. That's immediate. Are they being acknowledged? Are they being respected? And second, if you give them the right vision, they would be willing to wait. Right. Whether value is being created via cash or whether value is being created via equity, they would be willing to understand that. But if they feel that they've not been acknowledged while someone else is, that parity is actually a much bigger issue. And thus, how do you manage that? How do you tell people? And you can imagine, like, even an organization of our kind, I almost assume everyone's compensation is on a notice board and everyone can see it, right? Even though whatever we say around confidentiality, that ends up being true. So then, A, the company needs to do well. People need to believe that the company is doing well. B, they need to feel respected. And C, they can defer wealth creation or cash, assuming you've got past at least manifestation of that. In our case, we would regularly kind of do equity buyback whenever we've had an opportunity to do that. So this combination of all of this has kind of let us kind of keep this balance. As you grow, it becomes relatively easier to bring in people of a certain kind because there is a network. But then you need to figure out, okay, how do I get that same kind of drive energy? Previously, you were initially investing yourself, but then as you start to get more inbound, how do you keep that bar high?
I know we are at a time boundary, so I'm going to ask a question which is possibly not not as related, but looking at this, the composition of this room, which is many more men than women, composition of this panel, and and many other panels that I have seen. I think there's a question here which may be useful for us to think about. And the question is, what do you think about the hidden or the skill talent of women who want to restart their careers after some gap? And I'm also asking this question because all of you spoke about the power of networks. And if the groups are like this, and the networks are often of people who are like us, which could be men, men in most cases, then maybe the women actually get left out. So, is there any thoughts on that? And that's why this question, because 50% of the population.
I think Anshu just said startups, we have to win. So once we become big, then it becomes easy for us to say, हाँ ये भी accommodate करना है, ये भी accommodate करना है. Till that point of time, I think it is the best candidate for the job. And in most cases, it would not matter whether it is a male or a female. But I've worked with enough females who are fairly aggressive, who have been fairly delivering, etc. But like अगर network से hire करना और network ही है तो यही आएगा, क्या करेंगे? मतलब नहीं कर सकते कुछ. मतलब somebody has to trust you on day one. That trust will build over a period of time. Otherwise, it will not.
What I found is when you find the right female candidate and they get into the role, they would outperform. It's just harder to find those kind of people who would come in, right? And as Amit said, there is not that much room. But so the goal would never be to find a female candidate. But what I've seen is the ability to absorb pressure, the ability to kind of, once you're settled, kind of go inside the company, get the job done. That is amazing. It will take longer for that to build. It might not be easier when you begin, but as you grow, I think having that builds the right construct.
I will just like to offer a different view here. So my co-founder is a woman, and when she joined our company, उसने बहुत sacrifice डाला. So she was not from the music industry. So मेरा एक ये था that I am from this industry. I know everything. You are joining me. You have to prove that you're worthy of, whether you're a man or a woman. The fact that you're working with me, you need to prove yourself. So she was recently, she had got married. She was living in Bangalore. She actually shifted to Mumbai. Her husband was in Accenture. She moved to Mumbai in a PG. For a year, she worked at 50,000 rupees a month salary. It was barely enough to make, ends meet. And she stuck around. She's one of the unequivocal leaders. उसमें भी मैंने थोड़ी immaturity दिखाई. So after a year, when we had launched the product and we were going to market, things like customer success were becoming a reality. She told me she was expecting and she would need a short break. Now, part of me immediately congratulated her, and part of me also got really angry. Okay, I was like, damn, ye timing wise, this is terrible. And now I started panicking internally that how am I gonna manage by myself and so on. That was the time when I started taking the people and culture. I met a lot of folks and I realized यार जिंदगी चलते रहती है और ये सब होगा. She came back, made a spectacular comeback, lead sales and revenue for us. And I've used her example to, we have a 50% men, 50% women space. I've noticed a lot of discrimination even within our company, subtly, even though we are a creative tech company. हम music से हैं, we claim to be very, but once we had hired a head of sales, a senior guy, he came up to me. So my co-founder Meghna also does sales. So he said, hey, Gaurav, I want to speak to you. अभी ना एक मीटिंग हुई है क्लाइंट के साथ, मैं कुछ प्रेजेंट कर रहा था एंड मेघना शी इंटरप्टेड मी एंड सेड कि एक मिनट, आई विल जस्ट टेक इट अहेड फ्रॉम हियर. तो यार आप करते हो, मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. शी डिड इट, आई फेल्ट रियली बैड. नाउ द होल आइडिया इज, what do you mean by aap karoge? I have no problem if she does it, and I had to sit with him and say, boss, there is no aap or main over here. In fact, interrupting is bad, but even if I do it or she does it, there's no difference. Our lawyers are women. I've seen a lot of music industry label guys get really agitated when they suggest changes. Ye sab hai, but hum log bilkul hilte nahi hai. We are like, yeah, this is it. Because I've seen that women often bring, as I said, that personality diversity, stability, a little more harmonizing. Men often tend to be a little trailblazing, aggressive. We are very results oriented, and sometimes it can get heated within a small company also. And at that time, you need people who can get that stability and harmony. And I feel the women do it beautifully in the company. So we've backed them, and I hope everybody else. I think that's how it should be.
Thank you. And Amit, the ball is in your court. You have to start doing it a little bit more. Well, change.